It is, yes.
Captain Smith, thank you so much for being here with us today. We've had the pleasure of talking on the phone a couple of times.
Yep.
And I think we talked first back after you participated in this screening. Was it in August?
Yes, ma'am.
And what made you decide to do this program?
From a preventative aspect, we've talked before about your health being an investment. People invest in different things, whether it's stocks or iPhones or whatever. This is an investment in your health. And so I was discussing it with my wife. My father had quadruple bypass, and he was in shape. He ate really well. It's just a family history that his mother had the same thing. So I when he went through that, took it upon myself to, okay, well, what can I do to prevent certain things, or what can I do to make sure that I catch something early? I've done different blood work for early detection of cancer for the same reasons, because we're predisposed as firefighters for coronary artery disease and also cancer. So
yes, you are.
If we can prevent it or stop it ahead of time, let's do it.
Well, I'm curious personally, you guys get annuals, you get physicals, you get blood work all the time.
Yeah.
Did any blood work or any of the physicals ever help you understand what was going on?
No, and it's very basic. It's almost kind of like a check in the box type deal. Even if you go to your primary care physician, they're only going to do so much. And, they don't understand what kind of research is being done from the firefighter aspect, just through the fire service as a whole. There's so much out there right now that are saying, hey, we can prevent these guys from dying. We can prevent these guys from having this stuff. But the general public, as in the medical field, unless you're specifically honed into this kind of stuff, it's not really on their radar.
You're right. Robert and I've spent a lot of time educating the medical community about the increased risk of heart disease in firefighters. When we were here 15 years ago, we brought the calcium scan, and I think now that's become a little bit more of a routine part, but the advanced tests that we identified in the FEMA study are what we've put together for the SelectWell program. So when you and I talked in August, your blood pressure was a little up, and then when you and I talked on the phone, we talked about that, and you said, well, I was in a lot of pain that day. Tell me about how you were feeling at that initial blood draw, and what was your health history like up to then?
Well, it's kind of funny because I remember the specific question, are you in pain? I said, yeah, I've been in pain for 20 plus years from what I thought was just a back injury in my early 20s when I was in the service. And it wasn't until I got out that I went to the VA and, they did all this MRIs and everything else and injections. And I went through several injections through my life with it over the past 20 years, but nothing would ever really fix it. Went to physical therapy, all this other stuff. So when you asked that question, I was like, how does she know this? Yeah, I've been in pain for a long time. And I noticed that certain things, I just didn't feel right, and so I took the study to my personal care doctor, he's actually very good. He's part of the Northeast Georgia system, and he's seen me my whole life, my adult life, since I've lived up here. And so he's kind of pretty in tune, but he didn't really think to go as in depth as what this study did. And when I took that up there, he said, holy cow, we have to get you seen right now. Because one of my markers, I think it was a C-reactive protein.
Your HSCRP, which is not a what I would really consider an advanced marker, but it's a marker of generalized inflammation. Yours was one of the highest I'd ever seen.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like at 2, and mine was like at 14 or 20. Or
it was a little up there. It was red.
Yeah. So they immediately scheduled appointments, and I even asked the nurse when they were drawing my blood, are y'all going to give any of that back? Y'all are drawing a lot of blood. Even more advanced from this. And so one of the questions that got asked through that was, well, tell me about your back stuff. And then it had a marker that came back that was specifically for ankylosing spondylitis. And
So
that's
they were
what we
testing you for
discussed.
some of the autoimmune things.
Correct. Yeah, and that ankylosing spondylitis is a autoimmune. And the thing is with the autoimmune, you know this, both of you, that where you have one present in autoimmune, it always has a twin with it. And mine was a form of insulin resistance. So it didn't matter how much I worked out or anything, my body wasn't processing correctly. Well, as soon as they got that fixed, I had dramatic decrease of the bad stuff in the studies.
Yes, you did. You're fasting glucose and you're fasting insulin, so you were very insulin resistant when we first met you, and you had some other markers that were a little elevated as well, to kind of home in on that. But the autoimmune disease, what have they done for you? How has that?
So there's no cure for it, but they actually put me on Humira, which has been great. And like I said, there's no cure for it. The only cure is staying active and being on a medication to delay it.
And now you feel like being active.
Yes, I feel great. There were certain movements that I couldn't do in the gym or doing certain things that just hurt too bad. Now I can do it.
I hear you're into martial arts.
I am, and that was some of the stuff that was really hurting me. Is I was in some areas where I was like, I can't do this movement because the pain was excruciating. And I went back. I've been able to go back to it. The pain has all but subsided.
See, it's a vicious circle. If you're in pain and discomfort and you can't exercise, you can't improve.
Can't sleep.
Insulin can't sleep. Your cortisol levels are high.
Yep. It was to the point by I think the second blood draw I came to see you guys, which was just a few months. I lost several inches. I had to go get new uniforms just from the 2 medications they put me on. One to balance out my fasting glucose, and that was something else that they figured out was during the night, my glucose was dropping while I was asleep. And so they were like, the endocrinologist was like, your numbers are all over the place. They put me on some medication that stabilized it, and I've been great ever since. My sugar stays just as even
stable
as can be, correct. But I feel tremendous.
Aww.
The sleep's great. I've been much more happy. It's been wonderful. And all of this was because of this blood work that I was able to go to my doctor and say, hey, and he said, I'll be honest, I didn't think about checking this because you're still a young guy. You shouldn't have arthritis at 42.
Well, what's interesting is these tests that we have cobbled together, if you will, in this panel for firefighters was based on work that Robert did when we were here with FEMA 15 years ago. But even if the general public were to get these tests, it would give us some early indications. But in the firefighter community, your physiological demand, the sleep patterns that you don't get routinely. I laugh about, and I don't really mean to because I'm very serious, but it seems like everyone that goes into administration just continues to gain weight, and things, they start ignoring things. So I want you to, I'm so glad that you're in administration and you can.
Yeah. And when I was up here at headquarters, I gained some weight, and I thought just because I went from out in the field to a desk job, and then I went back out into the field. But I was still, I went to my doctor and I said, I just don't feel right. Something's wrong. Like something feels off.
So, I get asked this question all the time when firefighters do these advanced tests, because some of these tests are routine and your doctors, they recognize them, they know what they are. But a lot of these markers are unusual. They're in preventive medicine. They're in academic medicine. They've been used. They're well-established, approved not medicines, but lab markers. But so was your physician, he was receptive to looking at these markers? He
was, and my cardiologist loved it. He was ecstatic. He's like, where did you have this done, and how'd they find this at the firehouse? He didn't quite understand at first, till I kind of went through the spill with him with it. But they've they did a stress test on me that I aced. I did a echocardiogram. Everything looked great with it, and they did a calcium test on me as well, which was 0, which was great. And so I have a family history of high cholesterol, the bad kind, and so as a preventative measure, they put me on a statin just to be on the safe side, preventatively. Again, because of the family history. But I mean, I'm reminded of a firefighter that we had here years ago that was a stud of an athlete.
I think I might know who he is.
Yes. and he went through this stuff too. And this doesn't discriminate about how much you work out or how little you work out. Obviously, by working out, you do yourself a lot of favors and taking care of yourself. But, this kind of family history and stuff like that, it doesn't discriminate. It just, it comes after you no matter what.
It is amazing. Some firefighters I talk to that are way overweight, they have told me I've had to bring in my blood results because I'm a poster child and everybody thinks I'm about to die here. And then you have someone like the firefighter that you and I both know who's ultra marathon guy, but his family history led him to have triple vessel disease.
Yeah. To me, this is a no-brainer. You invest in yourself when you do this. There's so many answers that you can get out of this. And you look at how far medicine has advanced in the past 20 years. Why are we not using this to our advantage? That's the thing. Early detection in cancer, early detection in heart disease.
And look, late detection of autoimmune disorder.
Right. And, had I had this test 20 years ago or when I was in the service, totally different deal with it, and it's just a marker that they had tested years ago. But it's funny because I distinctly remember telling my wife, like, I understand why they didn't test me for it, but now that it's here and you pull up every symptom that this thing has, and I hit every single one of them. I mean, my life story was on a piece of paper with check marks. Literally every single symptom I had over the past 20 years was right there.
Wow.
But it also mimics other stuff. So, I didn't have some of the other stuff that would have made them go, you may have an autoimmune. That was never a question.
Well, one of the things that we're doing that your routine physicals don't do as far as insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes is if we can detect when someone is early on insulin resistance, we can turn that around.
Yes.
You can turn that around. And I try to explain that diabetes makes you equivalent to heart disease because of the damage it does to the blood vessels.
Correct.
So by you stabilizing and now reversing that path forward, you are going to live healthier and longer and have a better life.
This is that.
It's good analogy.
Well, so you have to, I use the word cobble, but we use some of the routine markers that you use in your physical. But when you add a component like fasting insulin to a fasting blood glucose, and then we do a little mathematical equation to help educate about insulin resistance. But the same thing with the type of LDL. A lot of people have an LDL of 130, 150, even higher, and it's a healthy kind of LDL. Some people have an LDL of 80, but it's the more dangerous, the atherogenic type, the kind that makes people go on to have premature disease. So using these tests has really, I hope, opened a lot of firefighters' eyes and hopefully even their physicians. And that's what we as educators do. We are not, as you know, I didn't tell you what you had. I just told you take your blood work and go talk to a doctor.
Correct. Yeah. And it even, like I said, some of my numbers were just fine. Like my A1C
was fine.
You
would never have known you were insulin resistant. And I get irritated sometimes that they use that test to look for that because that's a late test.
Absolutely. And she looked at my previous numbers and then the numbers in between and the ones that we did through this test. And she's like, oh my gosh, like this shows just exactly what we can't focus in on a specific number.
No,
you have to look at the entire picture.
The whole person.
Yes.
I think that's what we have created through this program is a more holistic approach. I feel that once we have a relationship and we talk on the phone, I think it went well over Zoom. I mean, you don't have to be in the same room. I feel like every smiling face I've seen today, I remember talking to them on the phone. But it's a holistic approach, and you hear why someone can't exercise like yourself.
Yeah.
You can't move. If you're in pain and you can't move, then that changes the scenario. And it's easy to tell somebody to walk out, exercise, lose weight, but understanding their whole life and putting it together, I think it's the part I enjoy anyway.
Oh, absolutely. This whole program has been just unbelievable in that sense. And I think that since the first one, word's kind of gotten out, and I think we probably have more participation.
Well, the past 3 days we have. So this is something that you guys have to want to do and participate in. And I'm so happy. And you've certainly done your job in spreading the word.
And I had to step out. I was one of those who, sometimes ignorance seems to be a little bit better. And I was kind of raising that generation of, don't show your feelings, don't cry, don't go to the doctor, right?
Well, you guys are pretty invincible.
I know. And that's something about firefighters that, we think we're Superman all the time. And it's easy for us to self-diagnose, or, we kind of know so much information of, well, I'll be okay.